So this morning we found out that the Supreme Court has agreed to take up a couple of cases having to do with Mifepristone, which is one of the drugs used in medication abortions. What does this mean? Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, let's talk it through. Basically, there's actually a set of cases here, and there was one we really didn't want them to take up, and that one they didn't. So that's the good news. The others they did take up. And all of these cases, by the way, involve a group called the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, which is an anti-abortion group masquerading as a group that cares about healthcare in any way. So first, let's talk about the case that the Supreme Court said they are not going to hear. And that was a case basically asking whether the approval of Mifepristone back in the year 2000 by the FDA was wrong, whether it should be revoked. And in that case, Mifepristone would just be rendered illegal. Bam. This is the case the Supreme Court declined to hear. So this case is not going to be taken up by the Supreme Court. Mifepristone stays approved, and that is the good news in all of this. So the cases that they are going to take up are cases between the same Alliance of Hippocratic Freedom and the Justice Department and Danco Laboratories, which is the lab that manufactures Mifepristone. And these cases are basically trying to overturn an earlier ruling by Matthew Kazmarek, that sort of fascist judge in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. He ruled basically to tighten restrictions on access to Mifepristone, to bring it back to pre-2016 levels of access, which are very, very slim. The Justice Department and Danco Laboratories want to keep it more accessible. And we're not talking about unlimited access. We're talking about keeping it accessible for telemedicine and also keeping it accessible until 10 weeks of pregnancy as opposed to 7 weeks, which is what the conservatives want. So the Supreme Court has agreed to hear this case. We don't know how they're going to rule, but they will take it up, and we should get a ruling sometime towards the end of this year. So there are a couple of important takeaways from this morning's decisions, and the biggest one is that Mifepristone is going to stay legal. It is here. It is not right now restricted back to pre-2016 levels. You can still get it until 10 weeks. You can still get it via telemedicine. That is a win, so we're going to celebrate that. And having said that, and not to be a Debbie Downer, but we should remember that just because the Supreme Court didn't rule terribly on this so far, that doesn't mean that the MAGA members of that court are not still trying to take away our freedoms, because they are. They are still working at the behest of a wealthy few, and we should not forget it. And let's remember that if Republicans take back control, all of the Supreme Court rulings in the world can't protect us from what they will do to our abortion rights and other freedoms. In other words, we still need to vote them all out and then do court reform. So let's keep on keeping on.